Hello there. So, this is a short audio to respond to your questions from Soul Shift Session 2. And I wanted to, continue over time to respond to all of the questions, and there just wasn't time. And so I didn't want to rush it. I really wanted to give some attention and some thought to your questions. So, this isn't mandatory listening if you don't have a lot of time. It's really just another offering to you to respond to some of your questions and maybe deepen your insight around some of the experiences that the collective is having, because of course those are always relevant to you as well. The first question is, do we have to open a circle every time you want to go and sit with the mesa, or can we just be in the moment, light the candle, ring the bell, etc.? I did respond to this one in class, but I'll just sort of circle around again to say you don't have to open circle every time you just want to be with your tools. It's really, think of it this way, you only have to open a circle if you're raising energy, which is what we do in ritual. We raise energy, we create a container, and then we raise energy in that container with intention to direct that energy somewhere, to do something, to do some work. If you're not doing that, then you don't have to worry about creating a container. You're just being present with your tools. But if you want to start to, work with your crystals and try to raise energy to manifest something in particular, that starts to become a ceremony. So I always ask myself, am I trying to do work, or am I just trying to meditate, and be present and listen? And that doesn't require a circle. I do like to smudge though, and it is nice to ring your bell. Why not? The ringing of the bell is both a symbol to you, to your central nervous system to come into present time, and it's also a signal to spirit guides to attend you a little more closely. So, why not ring the bell is what I would say. How do you balance? This is the next question. How do you balance the energies when they're mixed? Example, trying not to be sucked into drama and nasties by bodies around me, trying to be light and find them struggling with keeping dark, low vibe away. It's an interesting question. I don't have all the answers, by the way, to these. What I'm sharing with you now is kind of like my best thinking at this time, because even my thoughts on some of these questions change over the course of my lifetime and working with different teachers and having different experiences. What I find is I try to move fluidly through my life. I try to think of myself as smoke, and I try to go with the flow in that way, and I try not to find myself in pockets of resistance. If I find myself really spinning up on something, or a conversation around me is taking a certain turn, I have learned to be comfortable enough to say, I'm going to take a break, or would you excuse me, and sort of remove myself from the conversation. In my younger days, maybe less evolved days, I would say something like, this is low vibration, and do like the proselytizing that we do, right, when we think we know the truth, right, the one way. But I'm less of that now. I'm less trying to, I don't want to convince people of anything, but I don't also want to force myself to be in situations that don't align, right? It's just like, I'm going to take a break here, or would you excuse me for a few minutes? Which doesn't offend anybody, right, but allows you the space. We were talking in our integration ceremony yesterday about creating space for space. And you have every right to create space in your life between you and anything else. That's what that egg visualization, right? Like imagining yourself inside of an egg of light, like that is your absolute right. And no one has a right to infiltrate that space. But it's, it's about how you hold those boundaries. But I don't think about like keeping the low vibes away anymore. The reality is you're immersed in everything all the time. There's just no two ways about it. And so are you going to be able to keep it all away all the time? I don't think you are. And so that becomes less the goal for me. And the goal for me becomes holding my boundaries. And that's part of, if you watch the Magic for Beginners video, that's part of me saying, here's what's welcome and here's what's not. And then, let your spirit guides handle that, right? I was just thinking about, this is the third question, just thinking about running energy. Is that how we keep our systems from being overwhelmed? It is. And it's about expanding the channel. So you run energy more efficiently when your channel is expanded. And expanding your channel is a matter of a myriad of tools and pathways to be able to create that. Part of it is spaciousness, so claiming spiritual spaciousness. expanding the edges of your aura by visualization, working with your chakras. We should be looking at our chakras energetically every day, checking in. How is that root? How is that sacral? When you don't hold your boundaries, you can't run energy. If everybody gets all of you all the time, your channel is going to get real clogged and constricted. And that can show up as a lot of physical discomfort. So being aware of that's important. And this is kind of an ongoing subject. I mean, I really do believe that it's going to take us the year. I think at the end of December this year, you will look back and say, okay, like a lot of the, loose ends got tied up. and now I have 100 different techniques that I can use to run energy more efficiently. Because it's not about, running it better. It's just about, are you running the energy or is the energy running you? And I think for a lot of you, the energy is running you. It's like the horse riding the jockey. You know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't work. So question number 4, this is a question about the Bagua map. I set up a gratitude altar as a centerpiece on my kitchen table. If I'm facing the altar, I'm facing south. Would fire be on the true south of the altar with water being on true west, or does it not matter which direction I'm facing? I think you should. I try to make west true west, and I try to make south true south. And so that's how I do it. I look at the actual directions and then grid the room accordingly. So hopefully that's helpful. Next question is, how do I stay true to who I am when my family doesn't get me at all? You do the best you can. I mean, I'm out of the closet now, but I wasn't, and there wasn't a lot of acceptance or tolerance. And there was a lot of fear mongering in my family, like, ooh, if you do that, this could happen. And the reality is it was a projection because my mom had her own spiritual gifts and had no idea how to open circle or, hold the directions. And so she had terrible experiences, and then just, I guess, assumed that was the norm and then told me you shouldn't ever do that. And that's how generations of magic get shut down. So what I would say is find a way to be in community like you are here with people who are going to understand you and support you, and reduce your expectations of your family. Don't expect them to support you. At some point, there will be a shift there, but it can take a decade. It can take a generation. If you're waiting for it, that's a long road. It's like waiting for water to boil. So don't wait for that. You do you, and the rest of the Fibonacci spiral will unfold around you, in my experience. And I'll tell you something, when the validation does come, it's sweet. For my mom to reach out and say, my friend's having trouble, is there anything that you can gather up? And, it's like, wow, that means a lot, given where we were. Next question, how do you make the spray you used when setting up your altar in the classroom on that amazing Spirit Vine table? It's a great question. So I made a video in Soul Shift about this. It's called Limpia. There's lots of different techniques. That's my technique, but it's based on a tradition of using mezcal tequila, which is a smoked tequila, which is very purifying. Mezcal is considered a medicine. And but I think it's interesting how other cultures have a reverence even for the spirits of the alcohol, right? Which I think would allow us to be in relationship differently with it if we could think of it that way. But it's a mezcal base, and then I added, because I'm not drinking it, I added a hydrosol, beautiful hydrosol to that, and then just let my intuition guide me. It was just a plain mason jar from the grocery store, right? And you put some fresh herbs in there, some crystals in there, let your intelligence guide you. I added essential oils to it, and then you can bottle that. And that's your Limpia blend, and that's really powerful medicine for clearing space. You can just put it in a spray bottle. You can travel with it. Next question, I have a question about being born on a cusp. Does this influence your chart? I addressed that in yesterday's integration, so definitely go back and watch that video. Will help you. Next question, I need tips and tricks for programming crystals. It's a good reminder for me to integrate this into our curriculum a little more intentionally, because not all crystals can be programmed, but certainly quartz can. And a lot of people don't. It's sort of accidental programming. There's very few people who program with intention, like I want this quartz to magnify energy around this intention. They don't realize that they've sort of accidentally or unintentionally or subconsciously program their crystals, and not always necessarily in the best ways. If you worked with a quartz piece when you were terribly sad, you'd want to clear that and program that with a new intention to raise the vibration around your emotional state. So it's a helpful example. In a context like this, the most important thing I can tell you is think of your quartz as a sponge. And then once it has a purpose, a direction that you've aligned it with, it's going to move in that direction until you release it. And that's going to make you look at your quartz collection pretty differently, I would say. And you can put a sort of a grouping of quartz pieces together, like a grid is powerful for that. I'm looking at the one in my living room right now, and it's created with that intention. And you can ask those crystals to work together in community to synchronize their vibration in service of your intention. The next question is, what are some good stones that can stand in for tanzanite and black kyanite? Best sub for tanzanite, although it's not completely accurate, would be azurite, just in terms of the intensity of the third eye properties associated with that stone. Very different energy though, right? Azurite's coming to us from the Far East or the Middle East, and tanzanite's coming to us from Africa, and it's very different vibration and frequency. So I want to be careful with the word stand in, because for some stones like tanzanite, I don't really have a good alternative. But in terms of opening the third eye, to the extent that it does, I would say azurite is probably the best. And then black kyanite, nothing replaces black kyanite because it's one of the only crystals that clears anything it touches but doesn't need to be cleared. Selenite does something of the same, but not as intensely as black kyanite, which really is sort of I think of it as like a Roomba for your crystals, where it's just going around removing all the low frequencies. So I wish I had better news for you in terms of replacements. Shungite, though, is a good filtering stone. It's not going to clear everything it touches, and same with Izurine from Africa as well. And then the last question is, I know some of my sisters here want to know if you're considering maybe next year doing a mama retreat, or in the future. Unfortunately, because of the way our society views the plant medicine, it isn't something that I can offer. We do cacao, which is also a plant teacher, and that's something that is doesn't have legislation and restrictions around it. I hope in my lifetime to see some movement there. I think the legalization of cannabis leads a lot of us to feel hopeful. I wouldn't say optimistic, but hopeful at least. It's like we have to learn not to be afraid of these things. But I do think that there's sort of a fear in society about what would happen if too many people woke up at once. And that also may, to some extent, be a fear on the other side. I think a journey like that, for someone who's not ready, can cause more harm than good in certain instances. So it's also about this process of maybe building up to that and seeing that as an evolutionary step. I think one of the most important things, if you want to work with any plant medicine, is to set an intention for that. I do find that it finds you in certain ways, but it's really important to work with people that you trust, that you feel safe with, because it's a pretty profound journey into the depths of your natal contract, and so it's profound what stones it can turn over, and then it's about making sure that you have the resources to support you once you see what's underneath, so to speak. Whew, yahoo. So I hope that was helpful. Fun little 13.5-minute voyage into some questions. Thank you for the questions. I want to wish you many blessings, and look forward to being with you soon. Take care.